Hello everyone, and thank you and welcome to today's session. Today's webinar is Unlock Your IBMI Data Through Integration. Thank you for taking time in your busy schedule to join us today. My name is Jose Caso. I am the Lanza Product Marketing Manager. Please feel free to do questions in the Q&A option. We will have a brief moment to answer the questions after the webinar has finished. Today I'm joined with Andrew Baisunas. Andrew is one of our Lanza's senior sales engineer. Okay, but without any further introduction, let's get started. So today we're going to talk about how to unlock your core data. When we're talking about core data, we're of course talking about your ERPs and all that all your line of business information systems that run on legacy applications. And we're also going to talk about data and application challenges and techniques and strategies in order to get it done. So businesses are in high pressure to create fluid customer experiences. Nowadays, we have a lot of technologies that allow us to create that level of experience. So we have enterprise automation. We can really build one unique customer experience. And of course, the adoption of omni-channel strategies is growing all over. You can go buy a TV set on a company and they can take it to your home, and vice versa. You can buy it online and go pick it up in store. That strategy is permeating all over every retailer, and of course all the vendors that have to support it. And then after, of course, we cannot discount. Of course, we're talking about customer experience, but certainly partners, vendors, employees, they all have to share that experience. They all have to be part of that ecosystem that provides that experience to the end customer. And also creating these fluid customer experience, they also allow us to create new products and services. And so companies that before this level of automation and integration, they mostly were companies that were focused on creating simple products in a simple business model. Right now, they are finding new ways to exploit that data and create new products and services. But even if you think, well, I am a simple business with an unsophisticated business model, I'm not pursuing a flawless integration. Let's say that even those companies require to continue evolve, because although they may not need it right now, they may be losing a lot of money. And eventually, all your trading partners and customers will demand some kind of integration and automation in the future. And well, certainly there are also some obstacles that occur in the last 2 years. Employees are mostly working from home, and certainly there are fewer resources at disposal. And definitely there are some long-term problems that have not been addressed somehow. We have multiple data silos. We have multiple trading partners and constraint of supply all over. So
Jose,
sure.
you're talking about employees working from home, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why they're working from home also. Not the least of which is that nasty little virus that's been around for the last couple of years. So people were forced to stay home and whatnot. And how do they work from home? If they don't have all the tools at hand to see the data, to make the transactions, to talk with the people, to know who the people are that they're supposed to talk with and whatnot, right? And then when you say fewer, right, and when you say fewer resources at their disposal, also at a company's disposal, well, a lot of these people who went home kind of went, I like this. I like working at home, right? This really works. Other than that, maybe I don't have all the information I need, but it's I can walk the dog. I can make dinner, I can do all these things, and yet still get in my 8-10 hours of work every day. So a lot of employers are finding those people are hard to find now because they're finding, the ones that they want to have work in the office, they're finding it hard to find those people, right? So they need to start changing. Companies are starting to change how they're making that information available to the new type of employee, the employee that's used to web interfaces, the employee that's used to having information right at their fingertips, like we have been with Google and all these search engines, just right there. But how do we get information about our business? That's not in Google, right?
Exactly.
Because it's
Yeah,
all,
I think
yeah.
they are demanding these kind of interactions like bank portals
Uh-huh.
and buying online. It's ubiquitous nowadays that they want that experience. That is
Yeah.
what customers are demanding. But
And where are they getting it all from, right? Well, we've got here multiple data silos, different trading partners, and different types of customers and vendors and everything. So we've got all these different sources of information, and that's part of our issue. It's becoming a bigger issue because now it's not like, oh, I can just pop my head up in the table farm at my work and say, hey Joe, when is that shipment coming in from Australia? And then Jane says, hey, does anybody know if we got a payment from so and so, or if we should be putting them on credit hold? We don't have that anymore. Well, we do, but it's getting less and less common, right?
absolutely, I think employees right now they have to be able to solve so many things on their own that they used to solve it by untapping, just walking down to with Mary and asking her what's the
Yeah,
status of that
yeah,
order. Yeah, that
yeah.
is the kind of things and experiences that are being shifted. So also, well, let's take a look at a traditional enterprise company. In order to keep data moving freely through their various systems, a combination of custom and off-the-shelf solutions, they need to communicate in a variety of ways. Oh, sorry, something is going on here.
Too many clicks.
Too many clicks. Yeah, sorry.
Too many clicks.
So, for example, they may have a remote point of sale that uploads sales data to the ERP via Excel spreadsheet on a nightly basis. Or their top supplier may be using traditional EDI documents to exchange order information. They may have partners that require XML feeds every 30 minutes to rely on the inventory back and forth between systems. And they might have outsourced e-commerce system that uses RESTful web services to communicate order information and sync up customer data. So the reality is that these companies, all of these processes, they sound like, well, I think they're pretty much automated everywhere. But there's a
Oh,
different reality. So when it comes to business data and the processes that handle it, there's still a lot of data that is moved manually. There's still a huge number of companies still operating legacy and manual processes, and these are just a few examples. So, for instance, 17 billion faxes are still sent out every year by organizations and individuals across the globe. Believe it or not, the fax industry is still growing more than 5% CAGR. This is incredible. So a 2017 survey by Quickfill and Conquer uh, found that 84% of small business still rely heavily on manual processes. A study done by IDC found that 43% of workers said that they often have to copy and paste or rekey information between systems. Imagine that happening between a 5250 screen and a Windows applications. And in the same study, 77% of line of business leaders say the gaps in automating their existing systems and the lack of integration between them adversely impact the quality of the customer experience they can provide. Again, the same survey, 81% of line of business leaders describe having to work in digital silos where data is
You know,
spread. Sure.
no, I was
It's
just saying. Sorry, I just last week I was talking about your 43% that copy and paste or rekey data. Just last week I was talking with a customer that was creating macros in their 5250 emulation software to paste in standard verbiage in some of their responses to their customers and stuff. So instead of having that as something that's part of the system itself, by integrating some other some other component into their 5250 sessions. So there's a type of integration that's occurring right there, a database of responses with your current 5250 presentations and stuff. And then there's also yes, the gaps in systems. I think almost everybody has that group. If you have something like an IBMI in the shop, and you also have maybe a web group or a BI group or something like that, that might be in a sort of a Windows or Linux world, then right there you've got gaps in those systems also, because one group and the other group, they don't necessarily know what each have. And when they do need to make information available to each other, it's always going to be kind of like, well, do you have this information? Can you make it available to us? And there's no real understanding about where that information came from, other than it came from the IBMI, or other than it came from the Windows or Linux systems or something. So there are those types of gaps, and that kind of needs to get closed up to get those solutions faster to the users in ways that make more sense to the users, and appropriately using the data that's in those disparate systems and whatnot.
Yeah, I guess contextually we start getting a lot of problems because all the data is not linked. It's manually copied from one place to another. But also, these
Mm-hmm.
business critical processes are fragile, error prone, and fraught to risk. In the end,
Mm-hmm.
whenever we involve human labor in between for things that they really don't require it, you get to a
Mm-hmm.
point in which you may end up having a lot of problems. And remember, we mentioned about that experience, that unique experience we want to provide to customers. Well,
Mm-hmm.
if we're not being able to provide that experience to our own employees, vendors, it, well, we're not going to be able to pass that to our customers. Is that level of experience that they deserve, and they don't only deserve, they expect. So right now we're also going to talk about some integration difficulties. Systems sometimes preserved in individual silos, and the silos absolutely do not communicate with each other. Such kind of setup where we have multiple systems who do not communicate and talk with each other are called legacy systems. We should call it by the name. Now, these legacy systems have three key problems that we normally found. Is because these legacy systems are housed in different departments, exchange processes make it very difficult to access the system. So the long drawn processes from one department to another in immediate or real time access, it's almost impossible. Even without being able to deal with with the politics of working between different departments, the information structure is pretty likely to be very different because it's maintaining a different kind of database, and immediate access to that information or making use of that information for decision making, it's very, very difficult.
Mm.
And third and foremost, I think it's when the same information, if it's maintained across multiple databases, there will always be redundancies, inconsistencies, and errors that is going to be very difficult to make for the use of decision making. So sometimes it's it's better to try to find to have these information systems to communicate with each other. Are we going to throw away that information system that it has been working for so long?
Mm.
No way. We're
Mm-mm.
not going to throw it away, but we just have to make sure it communicates in the in the right approach, in the right way. So in this image, you can see an ideal scenario in which systems of record interact easily with systems of engagement and systems of insight. As we all know, systems of records, ERPs, HR, supply chain management, they are for record keeping and single sources of truth. But whenever we're talking about systems of engagement, we're talking about we're tapping on the experience economy, the multi-experience devices, and IoT. A lot of people say it's Internet of Things. I think it's the integration of things. It's really when we make sure that all the things that we have that are sensing all the behavior of the company as a whole, they they really integrate with one another, and they are talking the same language. So in the
Something I
end,
see
it's
in
about enhancing productivity.
something I see in this diagram, which I think is should be of great interest to anybody, is aside from the fact that there's multiple databases here, maybe multiple systems that are in place, which may be a combination of SAP and some pieces of maybe even JD Edwards sitting around, some homegrown stuff or whatever, different machines and stuff. But there's also that little arrow at the top, data coming out, being massaged somehow, and then insight, like information coming out of that. So just data going in, which could be like anything. Just, oh, here's how much this order or this list of orders was last week. But the insight is we're halfway to our budgeted number, right? And so we've got a lot of work to do and whatnot. That's the insight there. So it's that piece in there that makes a big difference. Also, is where you've got systems of insight.
Absolutely. And I think this is a moment in which we have to think of who benefits from this data integration. Well, the, the one who benefits out of this, it's everyone, from the suppliers to the manufacturers, distributors, retailers. Everyone is benefiting on this improved that integration architecture. But ultimately, customers are the ones who reaps the benefits of an enhanced experience.
Yeah, any of these groups, like the manufacturers, the people who are delivering all this stuff out to the retailers and whatnot. So all of these people, they all benefit. Anything that any one of those groups does benefits everybody else also. And I know it sounds a little bit grand, but the more we do in general in our own business to make our businesses better, the better the economy turns out too. Also, because then other businesses can sort of use our success to sort of grow their part of the business also. Our suppliers also are better off because we're doing something better also. So anytime that you can run your business better, integration is a big part of that. You're really helping out the bigger picture, and sort of starting off like that snowball rolling across your lawn, building a much bigger snowman than you might have if you just did everything on your own in the little silos that we have, that we've had, way in the past when we started with systems.
Absolutely, Andrew. And I
So
think so. Andrew will talk more about the technical reasons on why that integration is so complicated. And
Well,
so, Andrew, over to you.
well, no, sure. There's no over to me, but yeah. So yeah, having multiple servers is one of those things. I mean, just about everybody has. If you've got an IBM or some other core system, you've got a bunch of other machines around. Whether they're just other machines with the same operating system or other operating systems altogether. You might have web servers that maybe are Linux web servers or something like that, and then BI systems in your Windows boxes and your core systems, your JD Edwards, et cetera, sitting on your IBM say, right, or whatever other core hardware you might have. But that's one of the issues is, well, how do I get all of these to talk to each other, right? I mean, obviously we're from Lanza, so I mean we've got a lot of solutions that help in that world also. Like for example, in the IBM side, let's just say you're working with a 5250 application, and really the information that's sitting in that 20-year-old 5250 application is lacking some extra information from a Windows application or from a Windows database, say, right, or from some other database on some other set of tables of information in your IBM say. Well, can we then combine that information some way in a 5250 presentation so I don't have to keep moving around and have multiple windows open to try to, in my head, try to imagine how they all fit together? Why not have some way to actually make it all fit together? So at Lanza, we've got some capabilities to take 5250 presentations and mix it in with other information from around around your organization. So multiple servers is something that, yes, is a challenge, but there are solutions out there for them, including, of course, Lanza. I mean, again, we're from Lanza, so I'm going to mention Lanza once in a while, right? So, but yeah, so multiple servers is definitely one of those issues that people run into. I think we can go on to the next slide there. So different databases, right? So yeah, it's enough to have different servers, but then on each of those servers, we might have different databases. Like for example, we've got a DB2 database sitting on that IBM great machine that it is. We don't need much for other databases, but in the Windows world, or the Linux world, there's a lot of choices, and some of those choices aren't just made by you. Some of those choices are made, by the software that you buy to help you run your business on those other other servers, right? So, Jose, like for example, you might have BI tools that run over
Yeah,
SQL Server,
absolutely. Yeah.
right?
You may have
Uh,
a lot of databases that run in different architectures. Let's talk. And we also, not only is the software of our choice, but also the software of the choice of a big vendor or a big trading partner. So if you want to do
mhm.
business with Acme Store, which is a big retailer who has more than 1,000 stores throughout national wide, you have to learn and talk their language. There's no
That's
other
absolutely
way.
true. Yeah. And then sometimes departments will just say, hey, you know what? To be able to run my department well, I need this particular software. And it runs on a different database, right? Than any of the other ones that I've got, right? So yeah, so multiple database management systems really plays another big part, in the confusion here. So in the confusion of data sources and connectivity and everything. So so and also there's just the different types of transactions and transaction formats that we need to have to be able to work within our organization, or even with parties outside of our application or our end consumers. So things like stock status. So we might have our vendors that are kind of looking at us and kind of going, hey, you know what, we want to we're thinking about having a special on this and this and this product or whatever else. but we need to understand whether you're going to be able to supply that stock to us to have a successful campaign, and then to be able to place those orders and say, yeah, okay, great. Now that we know that this works for all these types of items, now we're gonna move forward with that. And then you got the Walmarts of the world that they're also saying, hey, you know what? If you can, you need to be able to guarantee us, month by month, certain stock to be able to keep it on the shelf in all our Walmart locations, just as an example. So maybe I should have called them Wally-Mart or something like that, but Walmart. So and then there's financial transactions, and even like payroll stuff sometimes, right? So yeah, those types of transactions have to happen. And how do they occur? REST APIs is one way that you can supply information to the outside world. Just one, right? Or maybe there's standard EDI, which might satisfy something like stock status, or FTP that you're FTPing. They grab a text file, say, even of a list of products that you prepare for them to get that stock status or to place that order, right? They'll FTP you that order, or X12 850 that ordered over to you, right? So those types of transactions are also sort of issues. Where do we get all the information to make more of that capability available to our trading partners, those people who are trading transactions with, right? Whether that's internal or external. Because remember, some of these people are working at home, right? So they're not in offices either in these external organizations. Just like in our own organization, we might have people working out of remote offices or at home even, right? Walking their dog every 3 hours or something. So even me, maybe at home, I need to have a way to look at what are the placed orders and what's the stock status and everything like that. So all these types of transactions, those are part of the challenge too. And it's not an easy challenge. I mean, there's a lot that happens. So another thing is consumer portals, right? So from the next slide, we've got e-commerce solutions that people want to make use of. So when I say I need a part for my car, am I going to go to a brick and mortar store to go find that part and then go, okay, it's not there. So now I'm going to move on to the next brick and mortar store, and it's not there, not there. Sorry, I'm busy. I got 15 minutes during a break while I'm working at home, and I want to make sure that I've got the tailpipe end that that I can put to replace the rusting one on my car without traveling around. So in that 15 minutes, I can use that e-commerce portal to to find that kind of stuff. So
Andrew,
I mean,
I think
that's
something that is very important here with
uh-huh.
e-commerce is that imagine you have this customer portal, but it has to communicate with your IBM GD
Yep.
Edwards ERP.
Yep.
So definitely the JD Edwards ERP is fairly used nowadays if you have an IBMI, and you have to communicate, and you have to make that to communicate to a software as a service cloud offering e-commerce store. So how can
Right.
you do that? That is part
Right.
of this of this level of integration.
So some of these types of e-commerce solutions are involve working with a lot of the tables and databases that you have and systems that you have internally. And so there is a level of integration that is involved right there, just implementing an e-commerce solution, right? Because again, that's sort of an information portal to some other group based on possibly a lot of different systems and databases within your organization. And again, I'd be remiss not to mention that. Yeah, I mean, at Lanza, we've also got tools that allow you to build these types of systems quite easily, and we even have systems that do that. Like for example, B2B e-commerce. So B2B e-commerce portals, we have those ready to go, just waiting to be integrated with multiple systems in the back end with all the little connections sort of pre-prepared. Pre-prepared, is that, or prepared? I'm not sure what that word should be really, but pre-prepared. Let's call it pre-prepared. So yeah, I mean, you got a really good point there. And then, order tracking or something like that. If I'm at home, again, I've ordered my tailpipe end, and I just want to know, when is it coming? Because I'm going to be in a few meetings between now and the end of tomorrow. I won't be able to pull myself away to get, to get the, to meet up with the courier or something like that. So I want to be able to plan my time around that, because I am working at home. I'm not working, in the office now, right? So I'm working at home. I need to be able to plan my time, and order, something like an order tracking portal really makes a lot of sense for some people. And that can touch a lot of systems too, right? And again, in the Lanza world, we just, we can create secure portals to do that, to create that type of functionality, right? So core categories of these integration tasks. So we just named a whole kind of garbage bin full. Okay, it's not kind of a garbage bin. A whole jewelry box. A whole jewelry box full of functionality and databases and machines and everything like that. And we kind of go, how do we make sense of all this, right? And then turn that into a solution, right? Without buying every little tool, screwdriver, system screwdriver in the world, and try to cobble together, a solution for ourselves. There's ways to do that, but first you kind of have to understand what what it is you're looking at. What is, what are the, how do I categorize stuff? When I go to make dinner, which I do sometimes, because I work at home, then, at some time around 6:30 or something like that, I get up and I make dinner for some, for some people at home here, right? Not always, but sometimes, right? But when I sit down, right, to make that dinner, I got to figure out, okay, do I have all the things? Like, do I have all the ingredients? Do I have a way, the method to make that dinner and whatnot? I have to organize things, right? And that's how I can make sense of creating that dinner. Our kids, they weren't very good at that when they were little kids. And why? Because it was overwhelming. There's just too much information. What do you mean it has to be butter and not margarine or something like that, right? So there's categorization, being able to sort of understand the issues at a much larger level than just individual departments or individual databases or something like that. That is I think a key thing to do, to be able to come up with a good strategy for solving your integration tasks. So identification, communication, transformation, processing, orchestration, these kind of cover pretty well everything that you need to be able to cover within an integration task, right? So what is identification? Things like, who is this person? Are they someone that we deal with, or that that we're aware of? Maybe they're just other applications in our internal systems. Like, I'm working on some integration tasks with a JD Edwards system, but maybe there's some homegrown stuff. So how do we figure out that this is a relationship between a JD Edwards piece of functionality and a homegrown piece of software functionality also, right? So there's an identification there. So we have to do things a certain way because of that partnership also. It's not a people partnership, it's not an organization partnership, it's a software partnership in that case, right? It's still kind of a contract between parties, right? Is there authorization? Are there passwords that are required for this? How do we communicate with them also? Do they have a name? Right? Like Andrew or Jose or something like that. Did they have a name? How about an IP address, for the FTP drop off or something like that, or network addresses internally or something, email addresses that we can send stock status to or something like that. So there's just identifying who are the players in the game. That's important. And then we've got communication, right? And communication is, all right, what are the methods of communication that we're going to use, right? So do we need FTP? Do we need to be able to send and receive emails with these training partners, automated emails of some sort, or even on demand, but still in some way some automation behind those emails. Who knows? Maybe there's some MQ series sitting around that you're making use of, right? And then secure web applications for, let's say, portals to your customers, right? So that's a type of communication also, because that's a machine to human type of relationship there, contract, right? So if you're working with outside organizations, you want to make sure, outside users, you want to make sure that these are secure type environments. Lansa, by the way, does a lot, has a lot of these things, right? We've got ways, built into the Lansa to handle communication, to handle identifying how certain transactions should be communicated or received. We've got software to handle secure portal type applications also, because that's a lot of work too. I mean, it really is a lot of work to create a truly secure portal application, right? Because there's a lot of hackers out there. They're constantly trying to devise ways to sort of trick your systems into letting them in, into giving them information that they don't deserve to have, or so there's a lot of value in a lot of the capabilities that we have within Lansa, right? Windows client server applications also, in those cases where you say, you know what, we're only going to make that available in installed applications. Lansa does that too, right? We can create WinForm type apps and that are installable, an installable MSI program or something like that, right? So that you can deliver those, say, to customers, to your trading partners, and say, hey, here's a program. If you don't have a mature enough IT department to be able to create those interfaces, here, we'll give you one. Here, just install that on one of your machines, and it'll handle all the communications, all the transactions. All you got to do is maybe drag and drop some text files or point to certain databases or something like that. So communication is something else that you want to think about and separate as, hey, you know what? These are the different ways that I'm going to work to move things around. And so when you're selecting some sort of a product or selecting a way to program these things, you want to take all that into consideration. Your whole group of ways of communicating, right? Not just, oh, for today, I just need this. So I'm going to find a screwdriver to do this one thing. And then tomorrow, oh, I've got something else. What you end up with is a big hoard of a big garbage bin, not a jewelry box, but a big garbage bin of code that's then going to be hard to maintain, hard to understand, hard to take over by the next group of programmers and next group of IT people, or whatever. So yeah, some thought into sort of collecting everything you know about how it is you're going to need to communicate in your systems in the future. So then we've got transformation, right? And so what is that, right? So that's where we say, okay, once we have identified a trading partner, we've identified who we're working with, we know that we can get over FTP, we can get this text file from them, say. We need to turn that into something. We can't just throw a text file at our internal systems, say, some random text file, and just say, here, system, take care of that, right? It doesn't work that way, right? AI isn't to the point where it can just sort of go, oh, here's a random text file. We know what all these numbers mean, right? So this is where some sort of transformation, either through code, which in Lansa that would be high level, low code tools to make that happen, or you might have other types of tools. Even in Lansa, we've got other capabilities for almost like a drag and drop line draw transformation capabilities also, to turn that text file, say, into a JSON file, say, right? That we then feed to a standard REST API that's in some other system, one of our homegrown systems. By the way, that REST API, maybe we wrote that using Lansa, right? So again, I know a little kick there for Lanza. But yeah, we do all this stuff, and we're proud of it. I'm going to say it, right? So instead of maybe handling each one of these with different types of programming language, different types of tools, each one sort of in its own island, right? As Jose showed one of the other slides, no system is an island, or no application is an island. I can't remember. It's one of those, right? So,
No business is an island. But yeah.
There you go. So we want to be able to treat all these, if we can. We want to be able to to treat all these sort of as just another transformation effort, right? So that's something that, yes, we can do that within our within Lanza. And yes, there are other tools out there for that, but we think that you're going to find a lot of value within Lanza for that. And it's not just converting the format, it's also converting maybe the codes too. Like maybe a vendor is sending their product codes, and you want to interpret that as your product codes, so you can look at stock or look what you need or what you don't need and stuff, right? Yes, your own SKUs as opposed to the vendor's SKUs. So within that transformation, there might be that kind of translation of codes also, right? So that's transformation. So that's another category, right? And then beyond that, we've got the processing, right? So how do we take all that information that we just transformed, right? We received through our identification and communication. We received the information, we've transformed that information, and now we want to process that information, right? So again, this doesn't necessarily have to be some sort of like an EDI transaction that we're talking about. This information that I'm talking about that we might have identified maybe from another system within our jewelry box of systems, right? And our communication may just be that it's a database connection, right, with this other system, and the transformation is partially to see the data in a slightly different way, so that we can, in our processing, then turn it into interesting information. When I say interesting, useful, interesting information, not just data, right? That we can show to our executives, that we can show to our portal users, that we can show to that we can show or send to our trading partners, et cetera, or send to another internal system or something like that. So that processing is something that is not translation, right? It's something where we need to do some number crunching. We need to make a whole bunch of decisions. There's a whole decision tree in there. It's typical programming type stuff, right? And what might be we typically have used to do that would be things like, having CL programs that work with RPG and COBOL programs to handle that data, to manipulate that data. C programs and C# programs for delivering stuff out to the web, to process it and deliver it out to the web over HTTP, right? That's another one of those communication methods. Java applications, same idea. Maybe Java applications that are running on the AS400 to process information or something like that also. And then there's that HTML and CSS stuff, which IBM people just love to program in, love to code in, right? Well, you can do all that. And of course, I'm going to mention also that Lanza does all this same kind of stuff, the same kind of programming that you might do with RPG on your IBM I. Lanza does that. Lanza can do that, right? We can create those 5250 applications if you want, or those batch applications if you want, or whatever, right? And if it's a C++ application, that's the Windows stuff. Yeah, we do that too. We create Windows applications and interface with other Windows applications. And the C# and the Javas, we can interface with those, and we can create applications for web. You don't even have to. In our case, you don't even, because of the low code capabilities within Lanza, you don't have to deal with that HTML and CSS and the C# and the Javas, creating all the Java service pages and all that kind of stuff. You do that just within Lanza. The same Lanza that handles the batch functionality, the same Lansa that handles working with secure portals, delivering the secure portals. That same Lansa that does the EDI transactions, right? So we cover the whole thing. We do a lot. We do a lot of things, right? Are we the absolute best in every single thing? Maybe not. Maybe we are. Maybe not. That's not up to us to decide. It's up to the audience to decide, right, Jose? So, and then the last piece,
Absolutely.
right, is how do we put all this stuff together and control all these pieces so that we know when to see whether we recognize this user, so that we know how to communicate with that with that user. How do we handle when do we do the transformation? What kind of transformation should we be doing to the data that we might get from the other system or from the home user or from a trading partner via EDI or something like that, maybe, right? So and then also, when do we, for which bits of data do we need to do some processing, some data manipulation, business data manipulation, feeding transactions and things like that. So when do we do all this? And that's the orchestration bit, right? So when we separate orchestration from all these other bits, then that helps to simplify the task quite a bit also, right? And again, orchestration, much like the processing, much like in cases the transformation, much like in communication in certain cases, some of these will require some kind of programming, and in other cases it's not, right? Depending on the tool. I mean, even within Lansa, some of these, depending on the configuration, sometimes we do some programming within Lansa to make all this happen. Sometimes we just do a configuration and say, oh, here are the things that have to happen in this order, right? So even within Lansa, we have different ways to handle each of these different scenarios, but that's really just orchestrating all these other four elements, right?
And also, I guess it's something very important to realize that orchestration is where a lot of things can go right or wrong, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
be able to cope up with mechanisms to see how you can first monitor that this is actually happening, and then
Mm-hmm.
countermeasures. It could be an automated signal or something like that, or even a simple message with someone to someone else, to saying that we have a failure in this information system. And because, let's be honest, so whenever we rely on human behavior, we may even have more problems. But if we have an automated machine that allow us to tell us, uh, this file was processed quite well, that it works. And let's consider all the moving parts that we're trying to orchestrate here. There are vendors that might be able to, that they may change their flat file they sent us without, and they didn't tell us there's a new field or a new change, or
Yep.
perhaps our CRM that we're working, and it's working and we don't control all the new features and the new releases. That it's one of the biggest problems whenever we have a software as a service, uh, is that the offer can change anytime, and we'll have to be ready and resilient to make changes fast. We cannot rely on all tools in order to do these kind of things. We have to be equipped uh, with the best technology to handle those kind of workloads.
Now
So
we've
this,
mentioned.
sure.
Sorry, and so we've mentioned a lot of cases where Lansa, can help out in this, and so far it can help out in all these areas, right? Because that's what Lansa is. It does basically everything, right? But we've not actually targeted any specific examples of how you would configure Lansa, how you can configure Lansa to tackle certain scenarios, right? And that's and we can't dictate that. We have to hear from all you guys that are sitting out there waiting to ask a question. we have to hear from you guys to hear what is that scenario that you guys have, or the future scenarios that you guys anticipate having also, because you want to be prepared for further in the future, not just tomorrow, right? We want to hear from you guys as to, what are those scenarios, so we can kind of help you sort of understand how Lansa, can be configured to help you through those scenarios, right? We may not be given the scenario that you have, and maybe some of the other tools that you have, we may not be the tool that you're going to select, for everything. But you guys are on the call today, so I'm guessing that you have, you've heard of Lancet, you've got some interest in how, in integration issues, and integration solutions, and we've got a lot of them and a lot of different ways to do that. So now we're dependent on you guys to sort of share those scenarios with us, so we can work together as that team to figure out, what's the right configuration of Lansa to make everything that that you're trying to accomplish easy and modern and ready for your future. So, Jose,
Well, I
with
think,
that,
well, I'm just going to give some key takeaways of, well, we have been talking a lot, but
yes, we have been.
certainly, just to summarize a little bit, it's like you, and as I was mentioning about using the right tool for the job. Yes, certainly, in a tightly controlled application, you can definitely go and do programming as you have always doing. But certainly, if we really think about in this scenario in which we don't control every part uh, of the solution, in which we have a lot of moving parts that they don't even rely on our department, or let's say we have a, a company-wide IT management, it is pretty likely that we don't control every aspect of the integration. So certainly having the right tool is also always going to help you do it easy, you know? So it's like choosing a manual car when
Mm-hmm.
automatics are available. There's a reason, and the number of automatic vehicles sold in Europe has more than tripled in the last 3 years, and why 96% of Americans opt to drive automatic cars. They're easier to use, they're more efficient. So I love manual cars, but that's because I enjoy driving. But when you want productivity, when productivity is key, and I guess we're talking about every business, then is this is when it's best. So
And
automate,
Jose,
sure.
one of the reasons might be because there's more electric cars.
Oh,
so, so, and that's the advent of the internet in the 90s, right? Electric cars. So anyway, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, that's good one. So
Couldn't help
automation
myself.
is on your side. That is something that you have to consider. You may think, oh, may not need to automate this process. It's so simple. Joe
Mm-hmm.
from sales have to send the all the orders to the factory at that time. But what happens if Joe is not there? If there's another problem, is let's remember back, they're working from home. Anything can happen. So if Joe
And what
from
happens?
sure.
And what happens if Joe gets really successful, and that little thing that he does becomes so in demand, he can't handle it all. He can't do the rest of his work also. So
Absolutely.
you have to account for success too.
Yeah. And also perhaps you may be the victim of your own success. You may have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
you have a relationship with a lot of vendors, but they all have a different standard. Some report weekly, some report daily, some report monthly, some use flat files, some other use EDI. Uh, it becomes a nightmare. It really becomes a nightmare. So automation is on your side. Uh, you should focus and put developers and analysts on solving real business challenges. I don't know. I think They might be part of the solution, but consider automation. I think it's. And the last key takeaway: there's never a one size fits all solution. So uh, there are many ways of doing and achieving the same result. They all have pros and cons, and definitely we might, if you have one situation that you think we in Lanza we might be able to try to tackle, uh, we certainly will try to do it in multiple ways. Just as Andrew was mentioning, there's not just one configuration of Lanza, or saying that
Absolutely.
Lanza does it one way or the highway. No, we have multiple ways of configuring Lanza, and they can handle different workloads in different ways.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say that. Good job. Right? Yeah.
Thanks,
So,
Andrew. So this opens up for Q&A. So if you have one question and you would like us to answer it right now, we're going to have a couple of minutes to.
and remembering that we're based on your responses, based on your interests, we'll do more of these, and we'll target certain capabilities within Lanza, certain types of configurations within Lanza to target the types of issues that users out there want, that customers out there want, right? So this isn't the last chance. We'll be doing more. What do we got? Anything?
So we have a question here: is can you call RESTful services a part of a business process?
Absolutely. Why not? A RESTful service really is just a step in in a process, in a longer process, and you don't know whether it's a small step. I can't define whether that's a small step or a large step, right? So a REST API could be something as small as give me the stock status of this particular item. A REST API endpoint could be as complex as here's a whole JSON package of everything of my orders for the whole month, right? So, and that attacks a lot of different systems and whatnot. So yeah, could it be part of a business process? Why wouldn't it be part of a business process? I would suggest that it is almost definitely part of a larger business process. So, and then you want to be able to figure out, how do I maybe tie multiple ones of these multiple APIs together also. Maybe if I'm consuming them, especially, or maybe someone else wants to consume some of ours, so we're publishing publishing some APIs, and to give them sort of that menu of ways to combine all these APIs to almost like build their own systems based on ours. We just have to supply the the rules of how you can call them, what should be called first or later or whatever else, that kind of matrix. But yeah, for sure, I think a REST API is definitely part of that. Unless I'm missing some detail of the question, I can't see why. I can't say that it wouldn't be part of a business process.
Okay, there's another question here: is if would you rely on data database connection instead of processing files? Would that be part of of a solution that Lanza could handle?
So so I'm not sure I understand fully that, but I'm going to interpret that question this way. Do we need a massaged copy of tables from different systems to work with, to provide information to say the home worker, or do we give the home worker a solution that actively and in live actively communicates with the different databases? I think it all depends on, there's a few things that it can depend on. And one, of course, is performance. Are we talking about, I've got millions of sales records out there, and what I'm trying to do is get an idea of how are we doing in our budget, in our sales budget, say. And that's a case where, having some sort of intermediary data mart type, or cube type, or summarization file of some sort, makes some sense. And we just update that periodically, whatever that is, every minute, every hour, every day, every week, or something like that, right? But in the case where we're talking with let's say the person working at home is a customer service rep, you want to give them, and they're generally going to be working with discrete items and discrete customers and whatnot, right? Not sort of this huge sort of almost like a business intelligence question. They're dealing with individuals, right? And with individual data requirements. So in those cases, I would suggest that it makes most sense, and it's completely possible and common in the Lansa world, to get direct access to those databases, rather than rely on things being, bits of data being pushed up through different systems and databases to some massaged area. Get the data where it lives, not necessarily create that complication of summarizing. So yes, depending on how you look at that question, I got a couple answers for you. But Lansa will do that, no issues.
Okay, we have another question here saying, if I have Visual Lansa, can I get to do all of this? I guess they're talking exclusively about Visual Lansa, not as they.
So that's where we're talking about configurations of Lansa, right? There are some configurations of Lansa where all you want to do is build 5250 and web and Windows programs, user interfaces and things like that, right? There might be a different configuration that does, EDI, formal EDI or something like that, with some front ends to sort of look at, all right, now here's the result of all these transactions or something like that. So, or maybe all we care about, we already have, the systems in place that can see the results of all our EDI transactions and whatnot. So all we need is just to do those EDI transactions. So that's a slightly different configuration of Lansa. So there's so I don't really want to call them different tools. They're just different parts of Lansa that you put together differently to be able to accomplish those things. If those are specific questions as to what is that configuration of Lansa that I need to cover a specific task, I think that's maybe a question that's more easily answered in person, on a one-on-one call.
Okay.
And we're of course happy to do that. So.
So I guess we have time for just one last question, and that is
really okay.
Well, last but not least.
Go ahead. Let's go.
What does Lansa offer to ensure the security of IBM 2 data if we allow external access? I believe they're mentioning IBM DB2.
Right. Okay. All right. So it depends on.
Yeah.
Right. So so there's a whole there definitely is a whole security thing, and this is not so much of a Lansa question as it is an IBM or a systems infrastructure kind of question. But like, for example, if what you're trying to do is some sort of secure portal secure web portal, say into an IBMI system or related systems, you're probably not going to go, run the web server on the ES400, because that ES400, unless you've got another, IBMI that's sitting sort of in a DMZ, right? You probably don't want the average Joe out there, right, who's sitting right beside maybe a hacker or something like that, direct access to your IBMI. Maybe you can figure something out to get by that for a while. But the issue is, if you can put something in the DMZ, that's better, right? And then communicate with the back end, one being an AS400, something else being some Windows box or Linux box or something like that. So security wise, we can handle, especially in the Lansa world. I mean, even outside the Lansa world, but especially in the Lansa world, we can keep that IBMI secure. And bottom line is, if you can put a configuration together that keeps that IBMI behind that firewall safe and secure, that's a better solution overall. It just makes everything else a lot easier for you, and the executives are going to breathe easier too. I hope I answered that question.
I think you did. Thank you,
Good.
Andrew. Well, thank you everyone for joining to our webinar. I really hope you enjoyed how to unlock your IBMI data. I'm Jose Caso, I'm the product marketing manager, and with me, Andrew
Andrew
Vaiciunas, senior engineer.
Vaiciunas, yes.
So thank you very much for joining, and I wish you have a great day.
Bye all.